All right, cool, cool.
Who's that coming down the track? Who's that coming down the track? It's a mean machine in red and black. It's a mean machine in red and black. Ain't nothing finer in the land. Ain't nothing finer in the land. Than a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan. Than a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan. Go, no!
What's up, y'all? This is John and Mike back for an Army Navy Week edition of the Nothing Finer podcast. Once again, live on Millions. So we're going to get into Army Navy. We're going to do a little Heisman talk, portal thoughts. I finally got my Joe Moore rant put together, even though it's less of a rant than I thought it was because they actually had a good group of finalists this year.
Okay.
Um, but how's your week going? What are you drinking?
Week is going really well. They're gonna have my oldest son Stanley skip the rest of sixth grade and start seventh grade in January. So that's pretty
Oh
exciting for
shit!
everybody. Yeah, no, he doesn't get his smarts from me. Obviously, if you've listened to any of this, comes from the other side of the family. But besides that, I mean, it's going well. Uh, still doesn't feel real for the most part that we don't have a playoff game to talk about. But I mean, life moves on. I actually don't have anything to drink right now. I need water,
Oh,
but I forgot to go grab it. But I'll probably be good. How about you?
pretty good, pretty good. Playing in a doubles disc golf tournament on Friday morning.
Okay.
Um, Going back to the scene of the Lyme disease crime
Get
for this
revenge.
tournament. I played last week, didn't get any ticks, and I mean you can't get Lyme disease twice because you never get rid of it the first time.
Hmm.
So that's the rationality that I've been telling myself. Um, but no, it is a super difficult course. Like they're trying to work their way up to get like professional events out there and stuff because of how difficult of a course it is.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. But I just got a caffeine free Diet Coke.
Sweet. We're continuing our December free alcohol deal, abstinence, dry, whatever you want to call it. I think that's probably I don't know if we brought it up on Sunday, but I think that's probably the reason why Georgia lost. Not blown calls, not missed coverages, is the fact that you and I didn't get like blackout drunk on Saturday.
Well, I haven't gotten blackout drunk for a game since Mizzou 2019. Um,
Yeah. Oh, I should take that back. Not blackout, but at least at least a good buzz.
yeah, no, and so I thought about that during the game. I did.
Hmm.
And for the Kentucky game and the Ole Miss game during Maker's Mark,
Hmm.
right? And I was like, you know
Okay.
what? I I may break it just for this game, just for a quarter, see if it helps. Um,
Hmm.
and I didn't do it, but you know what I did do?
What's up?
I changed jerseys at halftime.
Hmm. So
I
what you went
changed.
from what Jordan Davis to Lad?
No, I went from Ladd to Jordan Davis because Jordan
Oh.
Davis is what I put on halftime of the national championship game where Georgia beat Bama, and I was
Hmm.
like, let's get the magic back, baby. And it teased me. You know, they teased me. They got real close and didn't do it.
Yeah, I thought long and hard about breaking it. And it didn't help. Jen kept asking, saying, "Hey, do you need something? Do you need a drink?" And I'm like, I do, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually going to a concert tomorrow, and you know, I won't have a drink because I said I wouldn't, and I expect all of you to hold me accountable, but
Mhm.
I will want to.
Yeah, mental reps.
I will say, next week is Kelsey's work Christmas party, and
Ooh,
because I know some of her coworkers, I may be coerced into drinking a little.
yeah, peer pressure.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Um, But that's my only cheat day, and especially because it's 2 days before I have surgery, and I won't be drinking after surgery. So
Yeah, you can't be drinking and taking opioids. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm
Uh,
going to avoid taking those at all costs because I don't. I every time I've had to take them, I hate the way that I feel.
mhm.
So I will be taking some natural medicine. Um, yeah.
I know what you mean. Okay.
Um, so before we get into everything we're talking about tonight, couple things. We put some more stuff, some new stuff on the millions.co website for our merch. We got hats with multiple different options. We put a new T-shirt up there. Just want to reiterate that we are taking the reigning, defending, undisputed shirts down on the day of the national title game for this season. So if you want one of those, get it while you can. But if you want anything else, all that's staying up. Pretty cool embroidered hats that we got put up. It's the logo, and then you know, in January we're already throwing some ideas around about another shirt to put out. So we are definitely getting some options up there. Um, and then big shout out to the men's basketball team. Um, so they are 6-3 right now. 3-0 against ACC teams, and they have won 4 straight games. I want to say, well, they lost to Miami, didn't they?
Uh, I
Yes, three
I
and
did
one
they
against
3-1.
ACC
Oh,
teams,
okay.
because that was before the SEC ACC challenge.
Oh, God, that was that the game in the what Bahamas or somewhere like
Yeah,
that or
yeah,
Vegas? No, they lost to
yeah.
Oregon. I know that they lost to Miami too.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. Okay, so 3-1 in the ACC, so still upper echelon ACC basketball team. So
It's fair. It's
shout
fair.
out, shout out them.
No, man, Mike White's definitely turned that team around for the most part.
Mhm.
Still would like to see more of an effort towards offensive rebounds, but that's just I, look, when I played basketball, I couldn't shoot. I still can't shoot, but I was bigger than everybody else. So blocks, rebounds. That's what I did. You know.
Same. Bill
Yeah.
Lambier style. I can't jump. Never really could jump. I was a rim grazer as far as like dunking. Not very often, but if I had a clear lane, I could make it look like I dunked. But not anymore. Uh, Everything that I've talked to or looked at is they do get a little bit three happy, but that's just the game now. Steph Curry killed it. So uh,
And the Warriors are currently dead, so it's karma.
yeah. The end of an era.
Thank God.
Yeah, right. No more jump shooting. He just makes it unattainable for us. Made it cool that, get wet from three and not dunk. Make dunking great again.
It's what we really need to do.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go ahead and jump into some transfer portal stuff, and this is as of 8 p.m. on Wednesday, December 6th, because this is portal season. Started
Yeah.
before the season was even over. Before the window opened, people were talking about, yeah, I'm going to transfer. Um, so Georgia has had 6 players into the transfer portal as of now. Austin
Well, I think it's
Blasky,
it's I think it's seven now. I added
7.
the one in
Oh,
there
yeah, yeah,
maybe a
yeah, I
minute
see
ago.
it.
Yeah.
So we got 7. Offensive lineman Austin Blasky. He was fighting for that left tackle spot. I think the way Ernest Green turned it on down the stretch, he kind of cemented himself for that for at least the next couple of years, so that makes sense.
hmm
Um, Edge slash outside linebacker Darius Smith, the guy that if Ohio State would have been within 20 yards of making that field goal last year was going to block it because he had like a 200-inch vertical that night.
Yeah.
He actually left the team before the season was over to enter the portal. Wide receiver Jackson Meeks, he had few catches this year. I want to say he had a touchdown. He has entered the portal. Edge defender CJ Madden, defensive lineman Jonathan Jefferson, defensive back Nyland Green. He was the guy that played a lot of cleanup early in the year before Julian Humphrey really turned it on down the stretch. And then probably the biggest name to go into the portal is Brock Vandegrift, who committed to Kentucky today. So, what are your thoughts on Brock to Kentucky?
He's gonna be the best quarterback they've had at least this century. Honestly, they
Is he
of course
possibly
they
going to be the best right-handed quarterback they've ever had?
people are asking. He's Hefty Lefty is definitely on their Mount Rushmore of just players in general. But I mean Brock, obviously Devin Leary was a we both thought we were both really high on him going into the season. Obviously that turned out the way it did, but I think Brock's gonna do really well there if they can get the right pieces around him. He's gonna do well in that situation. He has all the tools to be able to do that. And unfortunately, would have loved to have him stay, but obviously the quarterback room is gonna get super even more crowded really with the two freshmen coming in this year and Brock probably staying. Not Brock,
Right.
I'm sorry, Beck probably staying. So I mean, I get it for him. He has at least 2 more years left. He graduated already. He already got his undergrad from UGA, so he was able to sign and everything already because he's a graduate transfer as well. So I mean, good for him. I'm glad he's going to be able to get a good opportunity there in Lexington. But I hope he kills it 11 games a year. Just not 12.
I agree. No, I agree 100%. I think that Liam Cohen offense kind of more or less depends on a quarterback that's able to move the pocket around, which Brock is definitely good at and probably will be better at, as getting full time starter reps. One thing that I really like about the transfer to Kentucky for him is the Dane Key and Barryon Brown are both sophomores, so they've got to come back
Ooh.
for at least 1 year unless they transfer. So he's got two top rate guys.
Mhm.
I think Kentucky probably dips into the portal for a running back, so I'm interested to see where they go.
There's a
Um,
lot. There's a few that just entered. Rocket Sanders, I just saw. I think it was a few hours ago, but he entered the portal recently, so he might be one that they look at.
a Brock and Rocket in the
Rocket
backfield in
Rocket Rocket
Lexington.
Ship Rocket
Yeah,
Ship in Lexington.
yeah. No, that'll definitely be interesting. No, I think it's a good spot. Kind of surprised he didn't go to USC or Oregon, like
Mhm.
was originally rumored. I mean, he was committed to Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. Um, that him decommitting is actually what got Caleb Williams that spot, and
Yeah.
then
Ooh.
you know Dan
Sliding
Lanning,
door sliding door moment. He would
yes.
have stayed. Hmm. Oh well.
Yeah, and then Dan Lanning obviously having those Georgia connections, coaching Oregon, and I really like their offense. So I definitely think that they've got a chance to do something good next year, depending on what their quarterback situation looks like.
Yeah, that would have been good to see Brock out there in that offense, considering how well Bo played the last 2 years. That would have been a good look for him too. But I
Yeah,
wonder if it was just as far as just staying in the southeast that he was concerned about, because obviously his parents and he's from Bogart, so he's not too far from Athens. I don't know if that played a big role in it. Although again, like you mentioned, he was an Oklahoma commit for a while before he decommitted and came to Georgia. So I'm not sure.
it's possible that Oregon and USC going to the Big Ten had an effect,
Yeah.
and I say that because no good old boy from Georgia wants to play in that weather.
Mm-mm.
There are
No.
zero good old boys from Georgia that want to play in Big Ten weather.
No.
And
Actually, you
Kentucky,
want yeah.
Northern
Oh,
Kentucky gets a little close.
My just a side note real quick, a quick tangent. So one of the PE teachers that I work with, his son, he's a college football player. He played at Coastal Carolina for a couple of years. He transferred to Indiana State. He's in the portal right now, and he's looking at a few places. And one of the places that he's been offered to actually plays an away game in Michigan Stadium. So I'll kind of let you know his deal, what he's been doing with the transfer portal when we get off, because I don't know what I'm at liberty to say,
Yeah, no, for
but
sure. That's interesting, and
yeah,
maybe even once his destination is decided, maybe see if
Mhm.
he'll come on in the offseason, kind of because the portal is such a mystery to everyone outside of college football, like outside of people that work on staff or something like that. I am
Yeah.
still confused on how the process goes. So if we would have the
It
opportunity to talk to
I
him, that would be
yeah.
cool.
I got it cleared up from again one of the coaches that I work with a little bit. I'll try to get some more details on it as well, so we can talk off air and get some understanding on it. But it just uh I don't know, a simple way to say it. It's a three-step process to actually get your name in the portal, but I won't go through the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to hear about that off
Hmm.
off air. So as far as potential portal additions to the Bulldogs, Kirby has continued kind of what he did last season, and if you're a wide receiver that did well against Georgia, he wants you on our team. So they're looking at Vanderbilt transfer London Humphreys. Is it London or Landon?
Oh, it might be Landon. I might have typed it in there wrong.
Okay. Humphreys. So the current prediction is he is 100%
It's
certain
it's London.
London. Okay.
Yeah.
He is 100% crystal ball to Georgia. He's currently the number one wide receiver in the portal, fifth best player overall. He was a three-star and number 66 wide receiver out of high school in the 2023 247 composite. He was a true freshman this year, 6'3", 195 pounds. Arian Smith esque speed. He ran a 10.6 300-meter during the track season this past year. 22 passes, 439 yards, and 4 touchdowns this season. 20 yards per catch. Um, 243 of those and 3 of those touchdowns came against Hawaii, UNLV, and Wake Forest. Granted, they lost 2 of those games. So, just,
But they're competitive in those for the
yeah.
most part. So he was a big part of their success, quote unquote.
And then he had that 49-yard play against the Dogs in Nashville. Um, and then if you want to take over reading a little bit more about him.
Okay. So his family, long list of athletes. His mom was an All-American decathlete at South Carolina. His dad was an All-American pole vaulter at Auburn, so he has SEC ties. Uh, and apparently he had to be talked into playing like football his senior year of high school during COVID. Uh, there, he did a lot of again because of his speed and everything. He did a lot of deep routes. So he's still kind of a developmental guy, even though again he had close to 500 yards receiving this year. So trying to work on that, and I think he can be able to do that. You can see how the success of guys like Ladd and Brock had at running routes and how clean and crisp they were in the program. So that should be a good thing for him. And like we talked about, you talked about, Kirby likes to get guys in the portal that played well against Georgia. Dominic Lovett, Ra Thomas are examples of that from last year. So again, just the best scouting is in person. Shout out Connor Stallions. So that Kirby did that. It's only 24 hours in a day. So if you played well against this Georgia defense, chances are you're going to be able to do that against other people. And then with the tools and everything that we have at in the Georgia program, seems like a solid choice. So I'm excited for him.
Yeah, no, I think that'll be a great addition. I personally wouldn't expect him to have a huge impact next season just because they're going to want him to develop more.
Yeah.
And next season's schedule is a bit of a gauntlet. I
Mm.
mean, open the season against Clemson, then you have the 8-game conference schedule and improved Georgia Tech team. I mean, that leaves two
Going
games.
to
Two
going to
games.
Texas, going to Texas, going to Bama, going to Ole Miss. It's a gauntlet.
Yeah. Um, So, of the guys that are currently in the portal, here's some big names. Got Juice Wells. Currently, Texas and Tennessee seem to be the leader for him. South Carolina wide receiver. Will Shepard, other Vanderbilt wide receiver. Auburn's already offered. Julian Fleming, Ohio State wide receiver. Walter Nolan, Texas A&M defensive lineman. R.J. Oben, he played edge for Duke, who had a really good pass rush this year. Kind of owned that Clemson offensive line. Joey Slackman, defensive lineman from UPenn. He is so.
He's a senior. So he's a 1 year guy. There's another guy from Harvard. I can't remember his name too. That I read about another defensive lineman that might be of interest. But
And so a lot of people are going to roll their eyes when they hear UPenn.
mhm,
This guy had like as soon as it was rumored in like October that he was going to enter the transfer portal, it became a big deal because he is dominant in the Ivy League. So that's a name to look out for. Georgia's actually had luck taking guys from Ivy League schools, offensive linemen from
in Columbia, right?
it was Columbia or Brown, and I don't remember which.
I think it. I think it was Columbia. I think it was, and there was a special teams like a long snapper or something like that that they got from Columbia or somewhere in the Northeast.
Yeah, Georgia has taken a few transfers from the Ivy League, and they've actually both, or all the ones that I know of, started.
Hmm.
And then we already spoke about it a minute ago. Rocket Sanders, Arkansas running back, currently is scheduled to visit South Carolina, and then there's not a lot of O line quality in the portal. I do think Austin Blasky would be a good get for somebody because he kind of was that second tackle behind Ernest Green,
Hmm.
um, but not a ton of guys like that. So
Yeah.
which one of those, or if you had to pick from these guys, who would be your top target and who would be second?
Honestly, Walter Nolan's going to be a big one. He's played a lot of interior line for A&M. He had 4 sacks. He had 20 tackles. I think he had 8.5 tackles for loss as well. Someone that can be a big body in there. He's 6'4", like 295. He someone again another big body that they can put in the interior. Hopefully he has kind of turns into a guy that we had hoped Bear Alexander would be before he obviously went to USC. We missed that. We missed that huge
The
presence in the
athletic
interior.
interior
Yeah,
pass rush.
yeah. Your Jalen Carters, your Jordan Davises, and so on. Like the other guys, I mean, Stack and played well at times. Ja really played here and there. Hopefully, he's a bigger part of the team next year. Uh, but yeah, Walter Nolan would be my one guy there. And then it's tough because we already got it seems like we already got a good receiver in Humphreys, their ideal speed and size and all that. But you can never have enough pass rushers. Like RJ Oben would be a good one for me as well. Um, again, you can't have enough edge rushers.
I agree. I would say my one's also Walter Nolan. Georgia was deep in it. He
Yeah, they
was
were
even committed
finalists.
to Georgia at one point
Mhm.
during his high school commitment, and that was the controversial first first big NIL class when Texas A&M got their highest recruiting class of all time.
I think
So
I think I think they had I think in the last 24 hours they've had A&M's had I think either 4 or 6 ESPN 300 guys from that class enter the portal.
I want to say they lost anywhere between 7 and 9 of those guys last year. So
Yeah,
they've
so they
lost most of
all of it.
that class.
Yeah, at least
Um,
at least half. Yeah,
that's insane.
yeah.
Um,
Rocket Sanders would be a good one too if healthy because we saw how much injuries hurt and hurt the running back room. You're down to 2 guys basically. So hopefully if he's healthy, give it a go one more year. That would be a good thing to see. When healthy, he's dynamic, so that would be cool too.
so Walter Nolan's my definite one.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily see a need in the running back room because so many of the guys that got sparing playing time this year, Andrew Paul, I think he's going to be an electric back once he gets completely comfortable with that knee and fully in the system.
hmm
Um, I mean, Roderick Robinson, Branson Robinson, when those guys are healthy, hell of a backfield. I don't really have a lot of questions there. But my second would probably be between RJ Oben and Joey Slackman. And I know people are like, why do you want a guy from Penn? First off, he's got to be extremely intelligent. He's
Yeah.
graduated from Penn.
Hmm.
And when you lose your front seven general like Georgia did this year with Pop getting hurt, you need somebody else you need somebody else that understands the defense as well, understands offenses just as well. And I think that's something that a guy like Joey Slackman could absolutely do. He's athletic. He's a little bit lighter than you would normally see play defensive line in the SEC, but put him at three tech,
Hmm.
and I think he could exceed in this league.
And he's like we talked about. I think he would be a senior. I mean, this would be. I think it's his last year of eligibility. So like he has experience. I don't think any moment's going to be too big for him. The team, the crowds that he played in front of at Penn aren't nearly as big as SEC schools, but
I mean, they're
they do
they're
get
sitting
loud.
over there having chants with like six syllable words. He's used to people being loud.
Yeah. So I mean, he would be a nice pickup as well. But I think at the moment when I saw it, I think he's had close to I think he had like 30 schools at least contact him thus far after he like officially entered the portal. So not that that means anything, because you have a school like Georgia come in there if they are in fact interested, they're going to jump the line. I would think at least be a little bit closer to his ear than somewhere like Michigan State or something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we're gonna go through a list of quarterbacks that are in the portal currently because this is always the position that goes absolutely insane with big names.
Mhm.
So we got Tyler Van Dyke from Miami, a guy that I think 90% of the country was really high on both last year and this year. And
Yeah.
between injuries and bad performances, he got benched at times this season. Dante Moore from UCLA, Cam Ward from Washington State, Will Howard, Kansas State, Daquan Finn from Toledo, Kyle McCord from Ohio State, Dillian Gabriel from Oklahoma, Will Rogers from Mississippi State, DJ Uyunglele from Oregon State, and Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina. That's insane.
That's not even it. We're only what 2 days into the 3 days into the portal being open.
Yes.
So Will Rogers seems like he's going to Washington. 2 4
Love,
set. Yeah, that's going to be a
love
good move for
that.
him. He's 100% crystal ball to Washington, so it seems like that's pretty much a done deal. And then it's funny, Grayson McCall, he was in the portal last year, then he ended up coming back, and that's one thing I want to point out. Just because somebody enters the portal doesn't necessarily mean that they're gone.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, the schools don't have to. The schools, when a player enters the portal, they don't have to honor the scholarship. Like that spot could be gone for him. So he's taking that risk of entering the portal to try to find greener pastures. And I think what was the stat? I think they said there was like 120 or something like that kids that entered the portal last year that never found a home.
Yeah.
And not none. I mean, none of the guys that we talk about they'll be fine, but it's the guys that think they can get somewhere, and then it turns out not to be the
I
case
mean,
for them.
last year, Amarius Mims almost went to Florida State.
Hmm. Oh
Like, he went
God, can
into
you
the
imagine?
portal,
Oof.
almost went to Florida State,
Hmm.
came back, or was it 2 years ago? I don't really remember. Sometime over
It
the
might
last
have.
two seasons.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah,
Um, this, oh, should, the thought that just popped into my head is terrible. Should I say it?
yeah, yeah. Get it out there.
If Marius Mims had gone to Florida State, they might have made the playoffs, and Jordan Travis' leg might be in one piece.
I was gonna say it. I'm glad you did.
I just, you know,
Does Florida State, if they beat Georgia, depending on all who opts out and all that, are they going to claim a national championship if they win?
you know, I can understand the rationality behind UCF doing it because
Hmm.
UCF beat Auburn, who beat both Georgia and Bama that year.
Yeah.
Florida State hasn't played any team that's making the playoff. They haven't played a team that beat another team that's going to the playoff.
What they're gonna hang their hat on what LSU and Clemson? And Clemson was, I mean, two what 8-4 teams
Yeah, yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Um, and let's be honest, we might be able to get a group of our listeners together that could hang 30 on LSU's defense.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm
So,
not running routes.
I mean, your son's a great defensive lineman. I think that's where you should go.
That true, true. Yeah, he can get out there and disrupt some stuff for sure.
Um, so we will say that there hasn't really been any rumors of what Georgia plans to do with the portal this year. Um, I think once the season is over, or closer to that point where kids are maybe having conversations with coaches, or guys are having conversations with each other that the coaches hear about, maybe we'll get a more distinct idea of what they plan to do. But as of now, there's really no rumors. I think they're probably going to go hard after some defensive linemen.
Mhm.
But the class of defensive linemen that came in last year also improved throughout the season and are probably going to be a lot more of an emphasis this year, especially those edge rushers. So, I wouldn't
Yeah,
be surprised if they didn't get more than a few guys, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they got four or five.
yeah. What with the guys that we got last year with Ra Ra and uh
Love
why
it.
am I blanking on something? Yeah. Dom. Did they came in the first wave of transfers, right? They didn't come in the spring, did they? I thought they came in the first wave.
Um, I believe you're correct.
Okay. Good. That would be, I don't know. That's not, I mean, every year is different, so it doesn't necessarily mean anything that they're not, we haven't heard a ton of stuff besides the London Humphreys
Yes,
pickup.
because Lovett had a good spring game. Rob Ross sat out because of the legal stuff going
That's right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, can't forget that.
on.
They both should be back this year, so that would be even better.
They both
Develop.
they're both eligible to come back. I think Ra Ra has to do at least one more year somewhere.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it's really just up to Lovett to see what he decides to do.
Yeah.
All right, Heisman ceremony is this Sunday, 8 p.m. And the odds as of Wednesday morning, Jaden Daniels minus 1,400. That's insane.
Yeah.
Michael Penix plus 900, Bo Nix plus 2,200, and Marvin Harrison Jr. plus
20,000.
20,000. I was making sure that I was reading the right amount of O's.
Yeah, I could have put a comma in there. Yeah.
I'm just kind of stupid. It's all right. I wish I would have put money on Jaden Daniels when I talked about it in October
Yeah.
because he was like plus 1,500.
Who was it? Penix at that point?
No, it was JJ. JJ was the leader.
Oh.
Wasn't that a
Okay.
fun few weeks?
Yeah. Just killing all these mid Big Ten and Group of Five schools. I mean, I think he only finished with like 2,500 yards passing or something like that. So it's not. Yeah.
Yeah,
Love
I think
JJ, but not individual numbers. Not necessarily his.
three
That's not
passing
where he's gonna blow you
touchdowns
away.
or four passing touchdowns in the last 3 games or something crazy.
Yeah, that's not. That's like 19. That's like Steve Spurrier at Florida numbers when he played and won the Heisman.
Shortly after the forward pass was made legal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Never forget.
Uh, yeah, no, I wish I'd put money on Jaden Daniels because he's obviously the winner. I think if Bo Nix had a Heisman moment last weekend, that was really his only opportunity.
Yeah, especially with Jaden not playing in a conference championship. So yeah, it's Jaden Daniels for him. I don't know what his pro prospects are coming
That
into it.
that's interesting because I haven't heard a lot of buzz around, him potentially being a first round guy. A lot of the mock drafts that I've seen so far have him mid second.
It's probably fair.
and it's to teams that are just pro versions of LSU, little to no defense and good wide receivers.
If he ends up being a really good quarterback, he just might go and pull like a Barry Sanders or Calvin Johnson. Just be like, you know what? Not going to happen.
Yeah. Jaden Daniels, 5,000 yards of offense by himself for his first 4 years. And he's like, he goes to front office, you really not going to get me a defense? Really?
Please, please.
I've got two MVPs on 8 and 9 teams. What more can I do?
Right? Just seeing the future.
That would piss Chris Smith off. I hope he hears it. All
He's
right.
gonna go to the Bears and just be just total, just yeah. Eventually.
Bears fans want Caleb Williams so he can own part of the team.
Well, Aaron Rodgers doesn't own him anymore. Obviously, Jordan
Um,
Love doesn't.
I. What do you mean? Jordan Love's undefeated against the Bears.
Is he? Oh, that's right. Aaron Rodgers, he transferred ownership to
Yeah,
Jordan
he just
Love.
transferred ownership. He put it. He
That's
put
right.
it in a living trust. You know,
Just
like all
whoever's
those
the yeah
wealth reels you see on social media.
yeah
Didn't want to pay taxes on the Bears. You know,
no
especially the
shit.
city of Chicago.
God, yeah. Don't get me started on Chicago.
You know, some people are saying it's Detroit with a cleaner river. I've never been to either, to
Chicago's
be
worse.
fair.
I was like, Chicago's worse. I promise. Lake Michigan though, very pretty. I highly recommend if you're gonna go to a Great Lake, go to Lake Michigan. Don't go to Lake Erie. Go
What's
to
the
Lake Michigan.
water temperature in the summer?
Still cold. Not Lake Superior. Lake Superior is yeah, might get up to 50, maybe.
No, that's what the
No,
water temperature is here now, and I still
yeah,
haven't gone surfing in 6 weeks. No.
yeah. No, Lake Michigan's nice. I think we're in the summer. We're actually going up to my parents, and then they're getting an Airbnb. We're all gonna hang out there on Lake Huron. So I'm sure I've been to Lake Huron, but that'd be fun.
I need you to take a thermometer with you, stick it in the water, and that by itself will determine if I ever go.
So Lake Huron temperature in late June.
Yeah.
It's
That
very
will.
possible that they're like a month removed from having snow at that point. So we'll see.
I, why do people live there?
It, it's traded off every generation or two. There's a big exodus or big migration north and south. Just go up to 75 one way or another.
We're having a cold December, and it's going to be 62 tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
So I think it's finally time for my Joe Moore rant, which ended up being not much of a rant. Um, Once again, because Michigan continued to win it without having really a top five offensive line over the last 2 years. But the award was like, man, maybe if we give a mid Michigan offensive line the award again, people just stop paying attention. So they didn't even make them finalists this year. And the four finalists are Georgia, LSU, Oregon, and Washington. Two SEC and two Pac-12 teams. The two most competitive conferences this season, if we're being entirely honest.
yeah.
So I didn't pay attention to any of their criteria. I kind of made up my own because their criteria is obviously not very accurate to how good an offensive line is.
They just pick it out of a
So
hat.
they're like, we're going to do it based on distance from our headquarters, and look at that, Michigan won again.
I'll be damned.
So I put in sacks allowed, rushing offense, and tackles for loss allowed. Um, those are kind of the three best since my offensive line stat website was bought out, and then the people that bought it out just decided they weren't going to do it anymore. Um, I just went with what I think is the most indicative stats of how good an offensive line is by themselves. Um, And then personally, I would take into consideration how well the line performed when replacing someone due to injury. Because being able to just plug and play offensive linemen shows that it's not just a starting five that's good, but it's backups. You've got good coaches. It's more of how well are you built for the future versus right now. So going into sacks allowed, Oregon first, 5 total sacks allowed, and their opponent's combined average sack ranking 65.2. So top half of the country in sacks is what their opponents ranked.
Hmm.
Washington fifth in sacks allowed, 11 total throughout the season. Their combined opponent rank is 48. Um, Washington played 0 FCS schools this year, and the 2 schools that they played that were not Power Five were Boise State, who just played for their conference championship, and Tulsa,
Hmm.
who regularly plays for their conference championship. So it's not like they were out there playing scrubs when they weren't playing Power Five competition. If we're still
Hmm.
calling Michigan State Power Five, I feel like that's up for debate.
Yeah, not this past season.
So Georgia is eighth in sacks allowed, 12 on the season, combined opponent average of 57.7. And LSU all the way down in 54th in sacks allowed, 22 on the season, with their opponent combined average of 41.5. So all these schools' average opponent sack ranking was top half of the country, best being 41.5, worst being 65. Um, and I just did the regular season because obviously LSU didn't play postseason, so none of the or they didn't play last week, so none of those numbers were added in.
Hmm.
So for rushing offense, LSU is the lone top 10 team coming in at 7th, Oregon 30th, Georgia 42nd, and Washington 98th. The Washington number really is just because of the offense they run. Um, they're an air raid offense, so they don't run the ball a ton. Tackles for loss allowed. LSU second, Oregon third, Washington sixth, Georgia 17th.
Hmm.
So, needless to say, this year they actually got, I think, the best 4 offensive lines in the country. I
Yeah.
think it would be a tough argument for you to find any other offensive line that is as good in these areas as these 4. Um, and, Washington rushing offense, I already said, kind of that's skewed based on the offensive identity they have. That doesn't really count against the offensive line because even against Oregon with their good defense, they were pushing them around last week. So, kind of is what it is as far as that goes. So with those numbers, I know I have my rankings down there, but who would you have as your? How would you rank these 1 through 4?
Honestly, I wouldn't go any different than what you have. So I'll kind of let you go about that. Georgia would be fourth in that to give it away right early. But
Yeah, so I have Oregon first. I think Oregon should win the Joe Moore Award. Um, they dealt with a couple injuries this year, never really slowed down, only allowing 5 sacks through 13 games. And you're like, oh, it's the Pac 12. That makes sense. Oregon State was top 10 in the country in sacks. And they played them on a rivalry game in Corvallis. Like they had Oregon had everything going against them there to allow multiple sacks, and they still came in with 5 throughout the year. 30th in rushing offense, and when you have a guy like Bo Nix that is transforming himself into an NFL quarterback, he's not going to take off and run like he used to. Third in tackles for loss allowed when they run the ball and pass the ball. They do use screens quite a bit at Oregon. I think they are by far the best offensive line out of this group of 4. For second, I would have LSU. Um, just because of those numbers. I understand they're 54th in sacks. They did play the highest average rate for like all of their opponents. If you average their sack ranking, they did play the highest amount. Not only
Hmm.
that, but they did have a quarterback that would hold on to the ball too long. He would try to run for it. A lot of times he would get hit on the sideline and lose literally a single yard while he was running. And
Yeah.
it's a sack and it um, counts as negative rushing yards, counts for all that, and they still finished seventh in rushing yards. They had 2,000-yard receivers, a quarterback that took 22 sacks throughout the season, and finished seventh in rushing offense. Tackles for loss allowed, second. I think LSU is probably easy second choice there. Third,
Yeah.
I've got Washington. Um, they played a higher average opponent sack ranking than Georgia did and allowed one less sack throughout the year. And that's saying quite a bit because they run the ball more or they
Mhm.
pass the ball a lot more. And, they are just, I mean, they're sixth in tackles for loss allowed. So I think that kind of speaks for itself considering Georgia was 17th in tackles for loss allowed, um, eighth in sacks, had the second lowest average opponent sack ranking, and rushing offense could have been quite a bit better this year. Some of that had to do with running back injuries, but I do have Georgia last out of these group of four.
Yeah, I have no qualms about that at all. I mean, it makes sense. I'm honestly kind of surprised that Georgia ended up being a top four or at least a finalist for the award. I don't, but I mean, obviously not a bad line in any case, but kind of not necessarily what we were used to seeing at least the last few years, but still, obviously quality.
I think one of the reasons, going back up to what I was saying at the top, taking into consideration how the team or how the line performed with plug in and playing guys, I think that had a lot to do with how Georgia got there because there were games where they had three guys out of position
Yeah.
and still won those games against.
Mhm.
I mean, Georgia Tech was top 40 in sacks and had three guys out of position in that game.
And you're gonna have to fill in some of those, next season too with Cedric and Mims for sure leaving. So
Yeah, Tate's probably going to the NFL as well.
yeah,
So
so
three
3 through 5.
spots.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Although the center that his name escapes me right now, but the center that filled in for Cedric when he went down with that injury for a little bit played
Mike
well. So
Morris.
I
He
mean,
played a bit of left guard for us this year too.
yeah. So I'm not worried about that that part necessarily, but
Cedric
we'll see.
Van Pran is actually up for the Best Center of the Country award. Was announced finalist earlier this week. So
Hmm.
you know,
And
he
Malachi got he got nominated for the what was it the
Bednarik.
DB. Yeah. Hmm. There's a few too. Did they say the all SEC teams yet?
Some of the publications started putting them out.
Okay.
I don't know if the actual All SEC team has been announced. Kind of one of those things that because Fox and ESPN and CBS and NBC and all the different social media pages and websites are going to put their own out. It's going to be tough to find the actual All SEC team.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, so the last CBS game of the year, Army Navy. Gary Danielson has said that this is by far his favorite game to call every year. It was by far Vern Lundquist's favorite game to call every year. So I think it's cool that it's on
Yeah.
CBS. Army this year 3-point favorites over under 27.5. Real Iowa line there. Um, but so I know a lot of people probably won't watch this game, but in my honest, biased opinion, it is not only one of the best rivalries in football, but it's one of the most important games of every season. Um, as someone who went through the admissions process to get into West Point, it's extremely difficult. It is extremely difficult. So even for athletes, Like if you are a scholarship athlete going to be on a team there, you still have to have a letter of recommendation from a sitting member of U.S. Congress. You have to pass the FBI PT test, which is a bunch of crazy stuff that doesn't even make sense. You have to go through multiple rounds of interviews, and the academic standards for admission are extremely high. I mean, we're talking borderline Ivy League level high, and they don't make exceptions for athletes. So it is extremely difficult to get into these schools, even as an athlete. Um, but this is also one of 3 games every year where every single member of both teams has already signed on that line to do a minimum 4-year contract in the military. Yes, the Air Force counts for this one. But I think it's also one of the most, or probably the most mutually respectful rivalry in college football because it is like this is Florida, Florida State, Bama, Auburn, Michigan, Ohio State for these schools, but you never see any fights. You never see people yelling each other back and forth. Um, and between the traditions involved, both teams have crews of guys that run on the road 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from campus to wherever the game's being played. It moves every year from New York to Philadelphia, and
It's in Foxborough this year, right?
yes, so that's even
Mm.
a further run for Navy's team because they're in Maryland.
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's cold.
Mm.
And they're
Yeah,
running
it is.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week until the ball gets to the stadium. I think that's super cool.
Mm.
Um, but both teams stand on the field, locked arms with their own team, not the other team. Um, and both bands and student sections sing their alma maters. The losing team stays on the field for the winning team's alma mater because the winner sings second. Like this, there's a lot that goes into this game. I think is really important, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's after conference championship week. It's the only college game on this week. Yeah, it's one of those things that it means a lot to me, and I kind of wanted to put that into words to try and explain it to you guys. This year, the jersey is actually from Third ID, which is the unit I deployed with. So, been waiting for quite some time to get a Third ID jersey. Little broken TV patch on the shoulder. I'm here for it.
Are you, did they start selling it yet?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I was told that someone got me one for Christmas.
Hell yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, the uniform matchups that how long have they been doing the specialty, the one-off uniforms for this game? Because I don't feel like it's been like too long, but it's been at least what the last 10 years maybe?
I was about to say probably about 10 years.
Yeah. I look forward to the reveals every Navy's isn't bad either. I like Navy's too, but Army's
Navy
they,
goes for like an artsy thing every year. Like they get
yeah.
their helmets airbrush painted for whatever branch of the Navy they're talking about. And I'm not trying to throw shade. It is really
Mhm.
cool, but like
Yeah.
Army does it to honor a unit, and
Mhm.
Navy does it for a branch and takes a more artistic approach. And like I
Yeah.
said, I'm
Both
not
are
trying to throw
yeah.
shade, but
Both are dope for sure.
yes.
I like I said, I look forward to the jersey reveals quite a bit. I was looking at the videos just before we got on too. So both
And
both dope.
both schools put more money into their social media video productions the weeks before the game than the military spends on feeding service members. I haven't fact checked that,
I
but
was gonna say, I'm like, what?
having eaten army food, if
Yeah,
they're paying anything for it, they're paying too much.
right. I yeah, okay, that's fair.
But no, if you're interested in checking those videos out, go to their social media because it's always a real big production every year. Um, they actually had to put an end to the pranks that students were pulling on each other because a few years ago, West Point cadets got a van, drove to Annapolis, broke in, and stole their live mascot.
They stole the goat.
They stole the goat.
I thought I
Um,
remember. Yeah, I thought I remembered that. Yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah, that they had to put an end to it shortly after that because that's a lot. It's what I would expect of Army, you
Yeah.
know, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it's probably not a good look for the school. They probably don't condone that, breaking and entering and stealing. Yeah,
They
that.
and the Army leaders don't condone it, but they also don't tell you not to do it. If you need to acquire something to help the unit,
Mhm.
they just don't ask questions.
One of those things, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Well, it's better to just not ask questions.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, you know,
It's a good life
say
lesson.
say there was a unit at JRTC in 2018 where a Humvee that someone was driving was missing parts um, because you're driving through a swamp, and someone says we really need to get these parts or we can't leave tomorrow. And then in the middle of the night, people climb over the wall to the motor pool and acquire those parts. And they're on the Humvee that's needing the parts the next morning. Is what
Hmm.
it is, you know. Like I'm not.
That's
Nobody asks
pretty.
questions.
It's a pretty crazy hypothetical situation. Yeah.
It's extremely hypothetical. It
Yeah.
never actually happened.
Yeah, I can't see that happening. Yeah,
I
no.
mean, shit, it's almost 6 years. Maybe statute of limitations are up.
Of this hypothetical thing you're
Right,
talking.
right, right.
Yeah,
Hypothetical,
yeah,
hypothetical.
yeah. Okay.
Um, so to get into the actual game, so I did do a little bit of a stat dive on this one. Um, this is the first year in quite some time that where both teams have had not good scoring defenses. Normally, they're both up there towards the top because of the style of offense they play. It's real ball control style of offense. But Army is 108th nationally in scoring defense. Navy is 119th. Um,
Ugh,
so not good.
no.
Army is 113th in run defense, while Navy is 28th.
Hmm.
Navy also plays in the American Conference, where a lot of teams have moved to more of a spread air raid style of offense, so that contributes to it as well. Um, but I do think Army's defensive numbers are skewed because of the level of competition they've played this year. So Army has played 3 Power 5 teams and 2 Group of 5 champions, like 2 teams that won their conference championship in the Group of 5. As an independent school that has all of those restrictions we talked about a minute ago. But those teams flip when it comes to passing defense. Army is 22nd against the pass. Navy is 94th, which, like I said, I think that goes into Navy plays in a conference that has a lot of pass happy offenses. But I do want to put into perspective how difficult of a schedule Army has played this year. So we're just talking about the LSU game. If you take out the LSU game, they go from 113th in rushing defense to 86th.
Hmm.
And that's ahead of teams like North Carolina, like teams that were close to playing for a conference title in the Power Five.
Hmm.
If you take out the passing yards, they go to fifth.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Army has played a significantly more difficult schedule this season. But as we kind of all expected, both of these teams are top 15 in rushing offense. Army has 7 different players with over 100 rushing yards on the season, and Navy has 8. Um,
Okay.
so this is kind of the part of where I look into stats that I don't really know who's going to win the game. Happens frequently. So this is normally where I go to common opponents. Well, the only common opponent they've had this season was Air Force. Army won that game 23-3, while Navy lost to Air Force 17-6. And just a little betting number here. If this over under was this, if it applied to the last 4 games, 3 of the last 4 would have hit the over.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I think Army is able to get into that passing defense of Navy. I know that sounds wild, but Army has actually tripled their passing numbers from last season to this season with a offensive coordinator change.
Mhm.
So I think it's hard fought. I think it's low scoring, but I think that passing is the reason that Army comes out on top. Go Army beat Navy, sing second, and if they win, they bring home the Commander in Chief's trophy.
What if Navy wins? Do they bring it home?
I think no,
Air Force?
no. It's a great question because Air Force lost to Navy or lost to Army, beat Navy. Navy
Mhm.
would have lost to Air Force and beat Army, but Army's the only team out of the three that has the opportunity to beat both schools.
Ooh. I'm gonna go with you. Army's gonna win. Don't even have to think about that tie-breaking scenario.
Yeah, let's not even put that into the universe.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. No, no,
Let
thank you.
let's call. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Army 27.
Oh,
I think they're gonna be able to pass the ball pretty well. Army 27, Navy 13.
so you're taking the over. Like Army's gonna cover
I
this almost on their own.
I am not officially taking the over.
Okay. I'm not, yeah, I'm not putting this on the sheet.
No. I'm just saying based on how this is going to match up, I think they've got a good chance because Air Force was running the ball extremely well until they played Army.
Okay.
Um, and Air Force was ranked when they played Army
Yeah. Hmm.
and they lost by 20 points.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm. Something wild. I was just looking at it a minute ago because I thought I remembered hearing this or reading it. So Army's actually joining the American Conference next year, obviously, if they could
good.
join in a different conference, right? So there's a
Good.
chance that this game could be played twice next year.
Could you imagine if Army and Navy played for a conference championship?
Huge. I'm curious. I don't know if they've said it yet. So what does that do for this game though? Is this going to be the last time they play it like on their own, like the only game on TV?
That's a great question. I'm
Because
gonna have
because
to look into it.
because yeah, if they are, because that would suck. Because I love the fact that this is a standalone game, all the pomp and circumstance beforehand, and I mean just everything
So
around the game is fun. I love
they
it.
are playing the 2024 Army Navy game at the Commie Stadium on December 14th.
December 4th. Good Lord.
Yep.
How the one that I mean, I guess the Americans not really planning on making the playoff, but how how
And it's already scheduled
how
for 2025 in Baltimore December 13th and 2026 MetLife on December 11th.
wow. Yeah, how would how I don't yeah, I don't understand how that would work. I mean, I'm glad it is a standalone still, but
I
how does
think
that
that was
work?
probably a big thing that they had to work with the American Conference to get it. Like, hey, like this is a conference game, but this game's more important than your conference.
What what if they did like the thing like what like you went was it who was it? Wake and was it Carolina or NC State? I can't remember like a year or two ago where
It
I know
was a
Wake was in
conference
it.
game, but it didn't count towards conference records.
Yeah, it was like their non-conference game. I wonder if they end up doing it like that, maybe?
Maybe that's definitely interesting. I mean,
Yeah,
there's obviously already the precedent there
yeah.
with Wake doing it with somebody.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. That'll be further research. Okay. Yeah.
I'll have to put a Google alert out for that, and then Google will let me know 2 days after the article comes out.
Okay.
Oh, um, so as we're closing it up for this week, guys, follow our social medias, nothing.finer.pod on Instagram, at finerpod on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. Just search us there. You'll find our page and our group. Rate and review the show 5 stars. Send us a screenshot. We will send you a sticker. Don't forget about our merch. I want to say if you order now, you can still get it before the holiday. So if you like to do that for somebody in your family or tell them to do it for you, that's always an option.
Hmm.
And as always, remember there is nothing finer in the land.
Then a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan.